Welcome to today's webinar. So grateful that you've chosen to tune in live, or perhaps you're watching the recording. This is a very important topic as we're going to take a look at how you can create a campus visit experience that converts. That's obviously what we're all about. We want to get those prospective parents to our campus, and then we want to convert them to an enrolled family. And then we're going to look at how you can take your routine campus visit to being something that's remarkable. So those of you who follow me, obviously, you know that my company is Enrollment Catalyst, and I work with schools all across the country and some select schools outside of the country to be able to help them with their enrollment and marketing effort. My main focus is through my Enrollment Catalyst program, where I'll work with schools like you see represented here on the screen and be able to conduct a site visit, or in some cases it's virtual, to be able to provide a comprehensive assessment of their enrollment and marketing processes and strategies, and then put together a plan and then help coach the team on implementing all the recommendations that I have for their school to be able to move them forward to reach their goals. I also have survey solutions in which I help schools with parent satisfaction, employee satisfaction, among other surveys. Also have a secret shopper program where I can go through the process of investigating your school, just like a prospective parent would do, and then give you the results of that, process and what I see and experience that along the way. And also, I have additional consulting programs as I help schools specifically with targeted solutions. For example, today we're going to be talking about campus visits, and actually worked with a school here in Florida, Holy Trinity Episcopal Academy, in conducting an extensive assessment of their campus visit program. So you may be interested in something specific like that. Also, I'm involved with my other persona as one of the enrollment marketing geeks, and you probably recognize me from my orange glasses along with my colleague, Andy Lynch. Andy Lynch is the president and CEO of Tassel Marketing. They actually just changed their name from North Star Marketing. So we have a show and tell show coming up where we're going to unpack the results of a survey that we conducted, looking at some enrollment marketing topics, trends, and tactics. So feel free to register for that show and tell show. It's a week from tomorrow, and that'll give you a great opportunity to be able to tune into some of the key topics, trends, and tactics that we'll talk about. So what are we going to do today? We're going to focus in on how you can turn your campus visit experience from being something that's just routine to really being a remarkable experience. I mean, that's what we want to do. We want to wow prospective families when they come to our campuses. So we're going to take a look at all those areas that you see here on the screen. Really, what I'm going to do for you is unpack all the different aspects of the campus visit experience. So what we're not going to look at, we're not going to consider admissions events like open houses. That really warrants a different webinar. I really want to talk about that individual personal campus visit. That's going to be the focus of this webinar today. And so you should be able to go through this webinar and listen to what I have to share and think about your own experience. And you can consider your own assessment. Are you just routine or are you remarkable? Because that's certainly what you want to be. You want to stand out from crowded competition as parents are shopping and looking at your school and other schools in the community. So let's talk about this in the beginning. And I want to focus in on some of the mistakes that I see schools making. But I often hear this from school leaders as I engage with them. You know, I know that if I can just get the parent to visit my campus, I can convert the family to an enrollment. That may not always be the case, though. Let's just say on average, you're converting 50% of your campus visits to enrolled families. I've seen it higher, I've seen it lower. It kind of depends upon your situation, and it's important to understand your own yield metrics. But if you're converting 50% of those campus visits to enrolled families, perhaps your program isn't remarkable, or there's other factors that may be affecting whether that family will enroll at your school or not. So you have one opportunity to create a compelling first impression. You're only going to have that one opportunity when they come to your campus for a visit, and you need to make the most of it. And that's really what this webinar is all about today. And by the way, if you have questions, you want to engage with me in some way, feel free to drop those into the question box, and I will engage with you at the end of this webinar. So that compelling first impression is critical because you may never ever get that opportunity to have that family back on your campus again. And think about every campus visit has the potential to not only be an enrolled family, but to drive tuition revenue. You need tuition revenue in order to be able to operate at your school. So without families who are willing to invest in your school, it's going to be really difficult for you to fulfill your mission and to be able to operate as a independent or faith-based school. So here's the first mistake, not communicating how to visit your school on your website. It seems like a no-brainer, but I see this often in my experience in working with schools because I'll go through and I'll assess, what's on your website. Are you clearly communicating what I need to do as a prospective parent to actually visit the school? Secondly, not reminding the parent of their scheduled visit the day before. Parents forget, they may have signed up for a visit, a couple weeks ago, and they may forget and something comes up. So it's important to remind them because they may need to reschedule. Just like, I got a text message reminder for a haircut I have scheduled later on this week. You need to do the same. Or making the parents guess where they should go when they arrive on your campus. I've been on lots of campuses and I've been confused about where to go. And think about that prospective parents' first experience of coming to your campus. Will they know where to go? Have you given them the instructions that they need? Where your front door is, where your main office is located, where they should park. Being unprepared for the visit, this is a critical mistake that I see some school leaders making. You put a lot of energy and effort into generating that lead and getting them to commit to coming on campus for a visit, but then you don't take much time at all to actually prepare for the visit. This is where you have the opportunity to wow that prospective parent and to convince them that this is the best opportunity potentially for their family. Or number 5, talking too much and not letting the parents share. I've been on lots of tours, and some of the worst tours are where the admissions officer is just talking the whole time and just, spewing off all the facts and stats about the school. It shouldn't be about a one-sided conversation. It should be about truly a discussion, a conversation between the school and the parent. Or overwhelming the parent with features instead of focusing on the benefits of your school. We can rattle off facts and stats about this program or that program, but in the end, those facts and stats don't really matter. It's that feeling they get. It's really looking at the benefits of being on your campus and seeing the potential for your school connecting with their family and providing the best educational experience that they're searching for their children. Or number 7, not just showing parents your facilities without providing a purpose and connection for the overall visit. In other words, I've been on tours before where I walk down the hall with the administrator and they'll actually say, here's where first grade is. Open up the door, peek in, that's it. Go down to the next door. Here's where second grade is located. Here's our cafeteria. Here's our gym. Without any additional context for what your facilities offer. It's not like we're showing off a house that we're trying to sell and you're looking for the number of bedrooms or the number of bathrooms or closet space. You're actually looking for the life-changing impact and benefit that the school will provide. So it's not just showing off your facilities. Again, it's more about that conversation. Or number 8, neglecting to close the deal. In other words, the campus visit is more than just a tour. And I'll talk about that as we identify the entire scope of the campus visit experience. But it's important that you think about how you're going to close up that campus visit. What are you going to do at the end? Well, that's it. That's the tour. Thank you for coming. It's great to show you our campus, and then send them on their way. If that's your approach, you're missing the opportunity for closing that deal. Or number 9, failing to follow up to thank the parent for visiting. I know we're busy, but that parent has just invested time. And so it's important to be able to follow up with them. to reinforce their visit that this would be a great place for their family and their children to be able to enroll this next year. So that thank you is very important. And number 10, just being routine rather than remarkable. And that's really what this whole webinar is about. The campus visit experience shouldn't be just a routine thing that we do day in and day out. It should be thought through strategically, and you should be considering how you can be intentional with the entire campus visit experience. So are you making any of these mistakes? And there's others that we could have listed. Is your campus visit program just simply routine? Or is it remarkable? Or perhaps it's somewhere in between. And that's what attracted you to this webinar today, because you wanted to think about some of the ways that you can elevate that campus visit experience. So last year I did a webinar on admissions to sales, and I think it's important to be able to communicate this in the beginning here, because that campus visit experience is about the sales process. So that's where you're guiding the parent and students through that family journey. So it's not a used car salesman approach. We've all had those experiences where we've gone into a dealership to try to buy a used car, and we feel like we're getting perhaps not all the information that we need. We're being sold something that's better than perhaps what it is, or they're negotiating the price and knocking it way down. That's not what we're talking about when we're considering admissions of sales. My wife and I spend the summers in northern Michigan, and just down the street from us is the Sleeping Bear Sand Dunes National Park. Beautiful place, and there's all kinds of hiking trails, and we love to go hiking. And every time I see a path, it reminds me that there's a dedicated trail, and potentially as you go on a path like this, you may need a guide, someone who's experienced it before, who can take you down that trail and show you the beauty of what you can experience along the way. And that's exactly what your role is in the admissions process when you're providing a campus visit. The families are on a journey. They're investing all their time and energy into their family, into their kids, and they're actually, as a father myself, you're trying to do the best that you can for your kids, and you're giving them opportunities and experiences as a parent would. And so you're on this journey to find the best school for their child. And parents are motivated in all kinds of different ways. It could be a pain point that they're experiencing, or maybe they're aging into a particular grade level, or perhaps they're moving into your community and they're looking for a school where they're on a journey. It's their journey to be able to find the best school for their child. So Andy and I at Andy's with Tassel Marketing, and I walk through the family journey in our Geeks on the Road workshops. In fact, if you tune in to our show and tell show next week, you'll hear us talk about some of our upcoming workshop locations. We're just solidifying different locations across the United States right now. And we have some great announcements that we hope to share next week about where we'll be and the dates and locations of those events. But we talk through this family journey because if you understand the family journey, you will totally understand what you need to do in admissions and marketing. And so today is really focusing in on more of phase two, the consideration phase, where the parent is assessing their alignment. They're making the calls to set up the tours, and through that experience, they're trying to shorten their list as to which school is going to be the best for their family. If you're familiar with Donald Miller's book Story Brand, I'm sure most of you are, you'll recognize this graphic here, because what he talks about is that in every story there's a character that has a problem, and the character meets a guide along the way that's going to help them with their problem to give them a plan. And that's essentially what your role is at your school. You're the guide. You're the guide to help the parent navigate this confusing process of choosing a school. So keep that in mind as you think about admissions as sales. It's not just about selling necessarily to meet a quota or to drive tuition revenue. All that's important, but it's actually functioning as a guide so that you can help that parent through the process. So let's walk through the different components of your campus visit experience. So generating the visit is important. It's obviously, focused in on marketing, and we're not going to spend time on this today because I really wanted to zero in on what happens once the parent decides they want to take the step and set up a campus visit. But all the marketing that you would need to do in advance of this, your lead generation strategies, and this will be a webinar in and of itself, and it's something that Andy and I unpack at our Geeks on the Road workshops. It could be a fan program, an ambassador program, referrals that are generated through word of mouth, your online marketing campaigns through paid search and social media ads, what you do in your website. I am going to spend a little bit of time there. Using a new tool like Call to AI. In fact, you may have heard Andy Lynch and I talk about this in one of our show and tell shows earlier last year. And this may be something you're interested in because it provides a tool to be able to engage the prospective parent once they land on your website. And it will eventually work toward your benefit in generating that lead for you. I have schools that have implemented Halda.ai on their website, and they're seeing, one lead every day coming in through that platform. So they're actually partnered with Tassel Marketing. So you can go through Tassel Marketing. It's the same cost to be able to consider implementing Halda.ai on your website. And I would highly recommend, this is like a no-brainer type of strategy today. So you generate the visit. So the parent needs to respond in some way. They need to either call or they email or they go online. So they're contacting you in some way. It's important that you're clearly spelling out, for example, on your website, what they need to do. Some schools take the approach of you need to pick up the phone and call us. I think that's an outdated approach. Other schools might say that you need to email, or maybe there's a form on your website, or there's an automated process. But your school's website is the most important tool to actually generate a visit, because that's typically where they're going to go when they learn about your school. They see an ad, they hear about your school through a friend in the community, and they decide to take the next step. So they're going to go online and they're going to take a look at your website. So it's important that you put in place some key website strategies. You need a clear campus visit call to action. Identify how they're going to take this next step and set up a campus visit. You need a visit page under your admissions menu. Some of these are kind of no-brainer suggestions, but I see these mistakes all the time. You need that page on your website that outlines the different ways that they can visit campus and they can initiate the contact. And you need to consider automation in the process. So let me give you some examples. A clear call to action. Take this example, Santa Fe Christian. Being named one of San Diego's best private schools is an honor we don't take lightly. Schedule your tour today. That's the main call to action, front and center on the top of their web page. Christian Heritage Academy, located in Chicago, a school I'm working with currently. You'll notice on their brand new award-winning website that they have two visit call to actions, one at the very top in their menu and one at the very bottom. So if they're going to their website and they're just seeing the top menu, they may scroll down. You don't want them to forget about how they can engage with the school. They can actually set up a visit and go through that process. Denver Christian, you see the call out there in the lower right-hand corner about scheduling a tour. So you're seeing a theme here. And with Denver Christian, they repeat those call to actions down at the bottom of the homepage of the website. So I think it's important that you consider having it multiple times in the homepage of your website, giving them multiple ways that they can raise their hand and express their interest, but also, as we're talking about here, schedule a visit. Foundation Academy, same approach. Schedule your visit. That's really what you want to do on your website. Now, I think it's important to have other call to actions as well. You don't want to put all your eggs in the same basket of just scheduling a visit, but it's important to have that one there because you want to take their interest level when they're landing on your website and encourage them to set up that visit to take the next step. Another example, St. Luke's Lutheran, schedule a visit. Again, that's the main call to action. Again, I think you should have other ones, and that really is another webinar that we can talk about later. So what about the visit page? So as you look in the admissions menu, it's important that you have the structure in place where you would have a specific page for visiting campus. I see this missed a lot of times, where you'll bury it in the admissions process, but make it easy for that prospective parent to find. In fact, the admissions menu is an important area to be able to see all the key steps in the process and all the information that a prospective parent would want. So if they click on campus visit, they're given the opportunities to visit. So in their case at Eastern Christian, there's open houses, there's personal and group tours, which is what we're focusing in on, and there's other ways that you can visit campus. So you may have different approaches to how you invite families to visit. Make sure that that's clearly outlined on a visit page on your website underneath your admissions section. With Christian Heritage, one of the things that I like under their admissions section is their Visit Us page, and they give information about that campus visit. So they actually tell me as the viewer of this page what I can potentially experience on that campus visit, and then I can click on the link to be able to schedule it. In other words, don't just communicate that you can come for a tour. Tell me what's going to happen on that tour. Give me some perspective as to what I can experience. This is Grace Community in Tyler, Texas, and they outline 2 ways to visit on their website. The main one I'm focusing in on is visit us in person. Join us for an on-campus tour. So I think you're seeing the main point I wanted to emphasize here. Now, automation is another key step that a lot of schools are using. So at the Woodlands Christian, for example, under their Visit Us page, you can actually go and you can select which division of the school or program of the school you want to go on a tour for. And so if you click on one of those boxes, the appropriate age level for your child, you'll be taken to a page where you can actually set up that campus visit. It's automated using Calendly, and this is probably the most common program that I see schools using to be able to set up campus visits in real time. The beauty of this is that you can put your schedule out there online, and a parent can actually select when they want to schedule that visit. I think it's also important that you communicate that if none of these times work, please reach out to us, and we can try to set up and accommodate a time that works for you. There's other programs like Grace Communities using HubSpot to be able to manage the automation of their tours. But I think this really is a cost saving or time saving approach to be able to schedule that campus visit that I would encourage you to consider within your school. Again, a lot of schools have this program in place or one of these types of automated programs, because then it eliminates the going back and forth. And then you can focus your time on reminding the parent of the time that they scheduled and giving them the expectation of what they'll experience. So now we move forward to the pre-visit communication and the setup for the campus visit. So there's communication obviously that needs to take place either through email or text messaging or both. And then you need to consider what are the key things that you need to communicate. I think you need to share with the parent that it's more than just the time and day of their tour, but where do they need to go? Who do they ask for? How long can they expect to be on your campus? What can they expect overall about the experience? What happens if something changes or comes up in their schedule and they need to reschedule? So I mentioned that I did a complete campus visit assessment with recommendations. I spent a day on the campus of Holy Trinity Episcopal Academy over in Melbourne, Florida. And I actually went through the process of signing up for a campus visit. I wanted to see how their admissions staff interacted with me as a potential prospective parent. And this is an example from Sharon. She does a great job on her campus visits. Highly recommend you take a look at what they do at Holy Trinity. And I love this email that she sent me. You know, hello Newberry family. She used my name. We're looking forward to my visit. You know, when it's scheduled. Gave me directions as to where I needed to go to the Tiger Welcome Center, and also gave me instructions about parking. Park near the gym. You know, and described it for me. And also mentioned that I needed to bring my driver's license to get checked in before our tour. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but that's an important aspect of the tour process as well. Uh, and so that's a great example of the type of follow-up email as a parent would set up a tour for what you would need to communicate to the parent about what to expect. The only thing that I may have wanted to communicate here in addition would be how long can I expect this visit to last? Is it an hour, 45 minutes, an hour and a half? Just give me some perspective on that. Uh, Also, Sarah, who focuses in on the junior high admissions there at the time when I was working with the school, she took a little bit of different approach as I scheduled a campus visit. She sent an email to give me some of the basic details, but then she sent a calendar invite. So obviously that works if you're using an online calendar. Then showed up, with the invitation, and there were some of the details about the campus visit. Now I would have repeated some of those details in that email as well, but again, they're doing an exceptional job with the campus visit program. Now you may use text messaging. In fact, a program like Calendly has the opportunity to be able to text prospective parents reminders. You might use a program like Haymarket, or maybe a cell phone that's been purchased for your admissions office to be able to communicate in text format. I think that's a wonderful way to remind the prospective parent of their scheduled visit. And you'd want to do that a couple days out or the day before that scheduled campus visit. I think it's important as you're working on this pre-visit, setup, is that you're preparing the staff. Yeah, you want to inform the staff about the scheduled visit the day before. Let the receptionist know that you have a visitor coming at 10 a.m. in the morning. This is their name, and for them to have an attitude and an approach like, I've been expecting you. It's so nice to meet you. Really, that friendly face creates that wonderful first impression. You obviously want to notify anyone that you want to connect with on the tour. So with faculty and staff, it could be a principal, could be a teacher, could be a coach, could be a director of a program. So it's important to give them a heads up as best as you can. So the arrival, the parents scheduled that campus visit. So think about the arrival and what goes on in the mind of the prospective parent when they're driving up to your school for the very first time. And I get to do this all the time in my visits with schools, pretend like I'm a prospective parent pulling up. I purposely don't ask for directions to the front office or anything like that because I want to experience it firsthand. So some things that you need to consider, the entrance to your campus, the directional signage, visitor parking, a welcome sign, the greeting, the security check, and the waiting area. So think about your campus entrance. Is it inviting? Is it create a first impression that's welcoming? Does it identify that they've actually arrived on your campus? So you want to make sure that your school has compelling signage. And these are some of the schools that I've worked with over the years and some of their impressive signage out front. I was at the Woodlands Christian last summer, and certainly compelling signage out on the road. And then when you pull up, you're greeted. You know that you've arrived at the Woodlands Christian or Academy of the Holy Angels, an all-girls Catholic middle and high school in New Jersey. And so there's the front entrance, and so it's clearly the school. They also have another sign out by the road, or Canterbury School years ago when I was working with them, an impressive entrance point into their campus. I'm showing this example from St. Luke's Lutheran here in Florida because they're a combination of a church and a school. I don't know how many times I've been on the campus of a school that's also connected to a church that doesn't have any signage for the school. And I wanted to point this one out because I think it's a great example as to using shared signage space because it doesn't give an overemphasis on the church or the school. In fact, both logos are represented and you see both depicted there in the name. And so that's an important consideration. You don't want to be hidden if you're located in a church or a parish or a situation like that. Now think about directional signage. When they pull into your campus, do they know where to go? Now your campus may be small and it's pretty obvious, but still I'd want to consider some directional signage, or maybe you have a really large campus. And so think about having specific directional signage. And where most schools miss the mark here is they don't have directional signage for where the admissions office is located. This is the Brook Hill School in Bullard, Texas, and you'll notice admissions and administration. So that prospective parent is looking for the admissions office. So it's important to identify where they need to go in order to find it. In some cases, you may want to have a campus map, like the First Academy, to be able to highlight where different buildings are located. And this is right in the entrance way, right out of the parking lot when you arrive at their school, or like at the Woodlands Christian, they have a map on campus. Again, this is a great stopping point on a tour because you could envision and visualize the entire campus, and the admissions staff member could be able to highlight that. Now think about visitor parking. You're pulling in, you're looking for directional signage. Where do you go? Is there visitor parking spaces that's reserved for visitors in general? That's probably the most common approach that I see in schools, but go a step further and actually have a reserved parking space for a future family. This is how Mount Pisgah Christian approaches this just outside of Atlanta. It's a great approach to be able to have that in place. And sometimes I find that these parking spaces are abused by current families. Oh, there's no one parking here. I can just pull in here and walk right in the office real quick to drop off something. So keep that in mind. I think one of the better approaches is having a reserved parking space that you can post the name of the family. I first ran across this at Ben Lippen in Columbia, South Carolina, where Kelly Adams does a great job. And she posts the name of every prospective family visiting. When I came in that day, you can see my parking space and also the balloons tied to the sign. So she had communicated to me, just look for the parking space right in the front of the school. It could be another approach, like where you see with Pardes, where they have a dry erase parking sign where they can, write the name of the family. Now that might work well in Arizona because they don't get much rain, and so it's not going to wash off the dry erase marker. Legacy Christian in Frisco, Texas, they have a place where they can slide in the name of the family on that sign. Trinity School of Texas uses reserved parking spaces as well. They had one for me when I was visiting campus. So you're personalizing that experience. You're expecting that parent, you're trying to wow them with that first impression that they will not experience this anywhere else. And then you're taking the next step with a personalized welcome sign. I've seen this in a lot of schools where they'll actually post the name of the visiting family just as they enter into the main entrance of the school. They did this for me when I was at Trinity School of Texas, and I know that Sissy does this for all of our prospective families when they visit Florence Christian in South Carolina. I love this approach. What Sandy would do is she would actually take a picture of the family at the end of the visit and be able to use that as a follow-up piece. And also she would post the picture of the family around her office. That would remind her of the families who had been on campus for that tour. So kind of a dual focus. Other schools, St. Augustine Prep in New Jersey, they would post the names of the students and families. When I went to Holy Trinity Episcopal, they had this digital sign out front, welcome Mr. Newberry, we're so glad you're here. And they would take that approach with prospective families who are visiting the school. So lots of different ways that you can accomplish that, but there's something about arriving in a place that's expecting you, and they're posting your name, and they're welcoming your family to your community. Now, as they enter into the main entrance, or maybe it's a welcome center, you need to think about that reception greeting, the security check, and the waiting area. So you want to have a warm and inviting reception area. That's pretty obvious. And a place where they can sit down. You can greet them. You can offer them something to drink. Now, this is a misstep. Provide a security screening. Some schools, they'll take the driver's license and they'll scan it into a program, and it does a quick security check. That's the approach that I would recommend, because it's the same approach that you would be involved in with any volunteer who's coming to your campus. I mean, think about it. We're inviting people that we don't know to our campus to be able to walk around with them and show them our school, it's important that we need to consider at least taking a driver's license, a copy of that, or inserting it into some type of security screening program. One of the other things that you want to consider is that provide the campus visit form either on an iPad or a piece of paper, a form that they can complete. It's a great time to be able to capture additional information about that family who's visiting your school. Fill in those missing data points that will help to fill out your database. So here's some examples. This is the Tiger Welcome Center at Holy Trinity Episcopal. Where I was directed to go, and a nice reception area where I was greeted, some soft seating, some visuals. They even had a backdrop where they would take pictures of students and families who are visiting, a little message, welcome to Holy Trinity. We're so glad you're here. This is an example of the First Academy in Orlando several years ago when I was working with them through this process. And you can see their greeting area. They used the TV screen to be able to post the names of families. At that time, they were using an iPad to be able to check in guests. It's Linfield Christian, clearly marked where the admissions office is located. Nice, beautiful welcome area. Nice soft seating where I could wait for my admissions visit and my tour. Mount Pisgah Christian, just outside of Atlanta, same type of approach. Notice some of the visuals on the wall, the soft seating. You know, it's an open environment, but it's comfortable. There's also coffee, other beverages, key messages about the school. You notice the slideshow on the TV screen. So think about what they're going to see as they're waiting for the admissions staff member to come and greet them and take them on a tour. Or St. Luke's in Florida here, and they're using some nice visuals that celebrate some of the history of their school, some soft seating. So you get the idea. Think about that overall experience when they walk into your school. So they walked in. Now they're there for their campus visit. So what are you going to do with them? You have the opportunity to spend some time with families. So your goal for the campus visit, obviously you want to make a positive first impression and a great first impression throughout the entire visit. You want to learn about their family. It's a dialogue, it's a discussion. You want to hear about their current situation, you know, what interests them, for them to talk about their kids. You want to connect and engage with them. You obviously want to showcase the right and relevant grade levels and divisions. You want to connect them to the right people. It's more than just about the admissions staff member, and you want to discuss the process and answer their questions. So think about that initial conversation. Here's some things to avoid. Again, don't regurgitate a bunch of stuff about your school without getting to know the parent. If you're doing tours this way, where you're just spieling off a bunch of facts and stats and stuff about your school, you're doing tours completely wrong. It should be an opportunity to engage and get to know the parent and have a conversation with them. Certainly don't lead with, hey, glad you're here. Hey, you have any questions about our school? No, I don't yet. I'm just arrived and I'm just trying to figure this all out. And don't talk all the time. In fact, this should be less about you talking and actually more about them talking, or at least a healthy balance between the two. I like the approach where you begin your campus visit experience with a brief meeting. You can meet with them in an office or a conference room, somewhere that's inviting. Think about the visuals even on your office wall. And then you want to focus in on having a conversation. This is where you can begin with questions about, tell me about your kids. You know, what are you looking for in a school? Or what is most important to you in your school search? Why did you decide to visit our school today? So some open-ended type of introductory questions that will get the prospective parent. Why is that important? Because you want to learn who they are and what they're looking for. Sure, you may have talked about some of these things with them on the phone, but don't hesitate to replay this when you talk to them in person. So that's why I like to start with a brief meeting. It could be 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Don't make it an hour, but spend a few minutes with them getting to know the family. Because that's going to help you consider where you need to take them on your tour. You know, the tour should be customized to the parent and their specific needs. So you may consider what your admissions office looks like. Do you have an inviting area that you can sit down and talk to that prospective parent? And that communicates some visuals around you. This is Lexington Christian in Kentucky. Now think about the tour itself. So you've had that initial meeting with the parent where you've talked to them for 15 minutes or so. You've gotten to know the parent. You've heard them talk. Like that's great. I really appreciate you sharing, in my office today. And, let's take a walk around campus. I want to show you some highlights of our school experience that will really benefit you and your family and really connect with them about some of the things that they shared during that personal meeting. So this is where you're walking and talking. So you want to know your tour routes. So there's different routes that you can take depending upon the specific interest level of the family. And I'm an advocate for showing the entire school, especially when it's a younger family. Obviously, if they're just coming in for ninth grade, you don't want to show them the preschool program. That's a no-brainer. But they're coming in for preschool or kindergarten. You want to give them a glimpse into the future down the road that you're trying to sell the entirety of the experience. You want to showcase the key classes and grade levels. I don't think a tour means walking and showing them every single classroom at your school. It's really hitting the highlights. If they're currently in preschool and they're looking for kindergarten, that's where you want to spend a lot of your time focusing in on the kindergarten class or classes and seeing what's going on and being able to connect with people. This is where you can notify some of your staff members in advance. And I would encourage those who are principals or heads of school who may be tuning into this webinar to consider that you have an opportunity to be able to connect with a prospective parent when they're there on campus. So I've been a head of school, over 20 years ago. And one of the things that I would really take an intentional approach to is to greet the prospective parents when they're visiting, even if it meant walking out of a meeting for a couple minutes to just make that prospective parent feel welcomed. That's one of the most important things that a head of school or a principal can do during that visit. So visiting classrooms obviously are a key. And I think it's important that faculty understand that they have a key role. They play a key role in the tour because I've run across some faculty, and I'm sure you have some of these members at your schools where it's like hands off. I really don't want visitors coming into my classroom. That's a whole different issue where the head of school really needs to get involved because you need that welcoming environment. And I think it's important that if you go into a class that the teacher could actually pause for a moment and engage with the visiting parent. In fact, back to what Holy Trinity Episcopal does, especially at the lower school with Sharon on her tours. Walking into those classrooms was just a powerful experience because the teacher would stop and would welcome me. And then there would be a couple greeters that would get up, usually a boy and a girl would come up and greet me at the doorway and would reach out their hand and welcome me to their class and tell me what they're doing at that particular moment in time. It's just a 1 minute conversation, but extremely impressive. And I've seen lots of schools who have taken this approach by having student greeters. And the way that the teachers would orchestrate this is that they would rotate the students so that every student would have an opportunity to be involved in greeting. So there might be a particular set of 2 greeters who are assigned for a specific week. And so they know that they're the greeters for the week. That's their role and responsibility. It works really well in the lower school. And so it's a great opportunity to be able to make those connections. I also encourage you to think about story stops. I wrote about this in a blog post last year. So as you're walking around your campus on that tour, are there specific stopping points where you would talk about a program, or perhaps there's a visual display that you can highlight specific stories that are going to connect and benefit that particular parent? So you might have some key messages that are displayed on your walls. Or maybe you tell the history of your school, or you highlight different programs, or maybe alumni stories or your graduates. Maybe you have multiple campuses. So if you have a family who's touring your lower school campus, I think it'd be cool if you had a visual display that would tell the story about the next campus, the middle school, and then maybe the next campus, the upper school. Again, you want to plant that vision for what to expect at the next level. And you want to talk about the continuity of the entire school experience, even if you have multiple campuses. Here's some examples of story stops to give you some inspiration. Pacifica Christian High School, they're in rented space of a church building, and they really have done a great job in Santa Monica, California. This is their head of school, Jim Knight, and he's taking me on a tour, and he's stopping at this point to tell me the story behind that picture on the wall. One of the things I love about these acrylic frames is that all these visuals can be changed out. There's other displays that talk about different programs like the arts or their travel program or athletics. So these are all stopping points where you can talk about not only the programs, but also some of the stories behind the images. Lexington Christian, I love this display because it highlights the history of their school, and those TV screens can be changed out with updated slides. A time to remember when the campus was built. They have these banners in their hallways that highlight different programs. These are great visuals, not only for prospective parents, but also for those current families and students who are walking the halls every single day to be reminded of the specific programs that are offered. Each banner is sponsored by a different organization or business, so they're paying for that banner. Obviously, as a Christian school, scripture verses are important to them. Their graduating classes, again, that's a story in and of itself. Academy of the Holy Names here in Tampa. They have like this area that celebrates and highlights their history, almost like a little museum feel to it. And so that's a great place to be able to stop in and talk about the history of the school, and even when they were named something different. And that gives you that visual for what the school is all about. Just some other examples, and these are all somewhat random, but this is the head of school's office at Holy Trinity, and some nice visuals on the wall. They're the home of the Tigers, so obviously you have this visual in the athletic center. At Mount Perrin Christian, you have the big eagle wings, and students would stop in the middle of those eagle wings, and it's a great picture moment, but it's also communicating some key messages about the school, just like Linfield Christian does on their walls. Same with the Brook Hill School, communicating key values on their walls. Back to Linfield Christian, when I was there several years ago, they had some banners in place. Or Santa Fe Christian, even little things like a flower garden that uses the letters from the name of the school. I love this approach at Holy Spirit Episcopal in Texas. They have this visual out front. We love Holy Spirit Episcopal. It becomes a great photo opportunity. Or Ben Lippen School, highlighting what the name is all about. What does Ben Lippen mean? Well, it's Mountain of Trust. And so there's symbolism that's there. Some key banners that they're sharing as you're walking on that tour. Mount Pisgah Christian also has some important visuals on their walls, communicating their core values. That's a great way to be able to display that throughout their school, and just other key displays. They recently added this one about Sharp Top Cove. It's a retreat experience that all the students look forward to. And so you notice there's no words really on this wall or this display. They're all pictures. And so as you walk on a tour, you can stop and tell the story behind Sharp Top Cove. St. Thomas Episcopal in Houston, this collage of pictures is really done in a brilliant way, just to be able to represent their school or key messages about who they are. At St. Luke's, they have some key field trips that they highlight. So even you can go to the approach where it doesn't have to necessarily be professionally produced. I mean, there could be artwork that is created and depicted on the walls. So you get the idea. You need to have story stopping points. And then when the visit is finished, you need to close the deal. That's where you're wrapping up. And that could be just a brief meeting where you're reviewing the application process, the next steps. You're giving them your parent info packet, your brochure. Maybe there's some gifts, some swag. Everybody loves swag. And then you ask them some questions. So what do you think? What was your impression? What stood out to you? Do you think our school is the right fit for your family? When do you think you could apply and take the next step? And based upon their answers, it's going to give you specific direction about how you can follow up with that family. And so that could just be a few minute conversation. It could take place on a bench out in front of the school if it's nice weather, or maybe back in your conference room. And then walk the family out the door. You know, take them from your office, walk them to the front door, shake their hand, and thank them for coming to visit your school today. That's an important part of the process, is to bring closure to that overall experience. And then as you consider what to do after the visit, I would send a handwritten thank you note. I mean, handwritten thank you notes can stand out. You certainly could do a text message, and that would be appropriate as well. I would also put in place an email where you're relaying to them some of the things that you discussed, and you're talking about those next steps. And so it's important to continue to reinforce that in your follow-up conversations with the families. Could be a personalized video. I've seen some schools that have used programs like BombBomb and Bonjoro and other programs out there where you could create a personalized video message. And it could be something that you put together in just the course of a minute or two. You know, Jim and Sally, it's so great to have you on our campus today. I enjoy connecting with you and think your family would be a great fit for our school. I just want to encourage you to take the next step. We talked about the application process, and so you could go through the details, and it's really a warm and friendly type of experience as you're relaying that to them in this process where you're following up with them at the end of the visit or after the visit, and do that really immediately, the same day or the next day. So I've gone through a lot, and it's typical in my presentations. I pack a lot of examples and illustrations, pictures, visuals as you think about your campus visit program. But I wanted to give you the framework so that you could think about assessing your own experience, or if you want to invite me in to be able to do that for your school, something I could do through my Enrollment Catalyst program, or a one-off consultation focusing in on just the campus visit experience. But how do you, or how would you assess your own campus visitor program? You know, you've seen kind of the model of what you should be putting in place with your program in your school. So how does your experience line up? Are you inspired, to take your experience from just being routine to remarkable? Hopefully that's what I've done for you in the course of the last 55 minutes as we've talked through how you can take your campus visit experience from being routine to really being something remarkable, because that's a great opportunity to be able to convert the family to not only just a visitor, but also to an enrolled family. So if I can help you in any way, I'm glad to offer consultation. We can set up a phone call or a Zoom call, and I can engage with you about how I could help you with your school, your needs, your situation, and perhaps I can use some of your examples of my visit to your school in a future presentation. Don't forget the show and tell show. That's something that you could register for. It's coming up next week, and I would invite you to tune in for that. But I want to engage with any questions that you may have shared during the course of our presentation. So I haven't had a chance, obviously, to look at these. So I'm just going to take a look right now and see anything here. And so see if some of these are long, so I can't read through everything here. But Vicky's asking here about a software app used for visitors, and it's going to really be varied based upon security. And so I would talk to experts in the security area to be able to help you identify what you could do there. Zane is asking, what does a good check-in and start the tour look like? Also, what are families waiting for? If their tour is at 10, should we be ready at 10? Yeah, exactly. If it's a 10 o'clock tour, you need to make sure you're on time. That needs to be a focal point. And again, I would start the tour with that personal meeting. Tiffany mentioned that she's moving to a group tour format, which could be a way to be able to work with families. I still prefer that individual personal visit, but you may not be able to have a personal tour with everyone. So you could have a group tour where there might be a mini presentation. I was just at Holy Family Catholic in Minnesota, and they do this approach with a group tour, and it works very, very well. Some other comments here. Vicky's asking, what is the standard conversion rate from visit to applying to enrolling? It's going to vary. There's a lot of different factors that would affect the conversion rate. So in general, you might say 50% from visit to actually enrollment, but yours may be higher, it may be lower. For example, you may be really selective as a school, or maybe your enrollment is really maxed out and you have limited rooms, so you can't really take everyone. So that's why it's going to vary. So Kyle's asking about larger tours from 15 to 40 parents per tour. Any tips for making the experience? One thing I would encourage you is that you should have a couple other people going with you on a tour. And actually, if you have 40 people on a tour, I think that's way too big. I would split it up into smaller groups because you can't manage a group of 40 effectively. It's just going to be like a show of all this large group of people going through your school. And then some other questions here. Rupali is asking about screening, and I don't think it's a free service. I think it's actually something you'd have to pay for. But again, I'm not an expert in security screening, but there's school vendors out there who do focus in on that could help you with that. Tanya is asking about apply now as a call to action. Definitely. I would want there to be multiple ways that you can engage with prospective parents. Inquire, download an ebook, visit, apply. All those are great types of ways that you can connect with families. Greg from a Christian school that I worked with mentioned that he has a time of prayer with the family, and that's appropriate for your school. Then certainly I've seen that be a valuable part of that experience. So again, just want to encourage you to reach out to me if I can help you in any way by offering a free conversation about your school. Feel free to reach out to me, and don't forget about signing up for next week's show and tell show. You'll enjoy that with my friend and partner, Andy Lynch from Tassel Marketing. And I'm here to help you in any way that I can. So thank you for tuning in today. And if you have follow-up questions for me, don't hesitate to reach out. You see my contact information here on the screen. But as always, I enjoy helping schools with their enrollment and marketing processes and strategies to be able to move you from where you're at now to really having an excellent program in place. And hopefully today has inspired you to take your campus visit experience from just being routine to being something that's truly remarkable. Thank you.